Before we begin, take a moment to let your eyes grow soft and heavy. There's no need to hold on to anything right now. Let the world outside fade away and allow your body to sink gently into rest. You are safe here, wrapped in stillness, guided only by breath, comfort, and the quiet warmth of curiosity. You might hear the faint ticking of a clock in the corner, the distant hush of leaves rustling outside your window, or maybe somewhere deep within, the slow, calming rhythm of your own heart, steady and gentle. As you drift into this quiet space, let yourself be soothed by a gentle story one that carries you softly back in time, not to the noise or violence of war, but to the hushed human places in between, to the small tent lanterns, the cloth-bound notebooks, the soft voice of someone who cared in a time when it mattered most. Our story tonight begins in the year 1917, far from any map, you know, along the edge of a French field, blurred by fog and early morning mist. You're standing just beyond the front, wrapped in a thick wool cloak, boots damp with dew, the sky overhead a soft gray sheet stretched across the clouds. You are not a soldier, not really. You carry no rifle, no bayonet. Instead, you carry gauze, scissors, tinctures, and trembling hands. You are a medic in the Great War, a stretcher-bearer, a caretaker, a witness to both pain and peace. Your hands are your tools. Your ears are always listening for a groan or a whisper through the smoke. And your duty is quiet, but never small. You begin your day before the sun rises. Inside the canvas medical tent, the air is sharp with the scent of carbolic acid and wet linen. Candlelight flickers on the edges of surgical tools, neatly arranged beside a half-empty kettle of boiled water. Somewhere nearby, a man coughs deep, rasping, and a nurse murmurs something kind as she adjusts a blanket. You step outside for a moment, just to breathe. The trench lines snake across the muddy field in front of you like some great beast curled in sleep. There's a stillness in this moment before dawn, when the fog has yet to lift and the guns have yet to start. It almost feels like the world is paused, like the war forgot you, but it hasn't. You never forget. Your work is steady. The wounded come to you on stretchers, or leaning on each other, or dragged by frantic hands through the muck. Some speak, some don't. Some are wrapped in stories you'll never hear. You wipe blood from their cheeks, check for pulses, remove boots with careful hands to avoid jostling shattered bones. You stitch where you can. You send the rest to the triage tent where doctors wait, sleeves rolled, eyes lined with sleeplessness. You never stop moving. You tie tourniquets until your fingers ache. You warm cold hands with yours. You whisper gentle things even when no one answers. One of the things they never told you when you signed up was how much silence you'd be wrapped in. Not just the silence between shellings, or the silence of the men you carry, but the silence within, a kind of soft, persistent quiet that lives in your chest while you work, a quiet that helps you block out the groans, the shaking, the blood. And when you lie down at night on a cot barely wide enough for your shoulders, with only your overcoat to keep you warm, it's that same silence that rocks you to sleep. Some days the wounded come in too fast to count. You don't speak, you simply work. You become a rhythm boil water, clean hands, assess wounds, bandage, repeat. You hum sometimes under your breath, a lullaby your mother used to sing, or maybe just a tune you made up to keep the chaos at bay. It calms the ones on the cots. It calms you, too. In these moments, your hands remember things your mind forgets: where to place pressure, when to cut, when not to, and above all, how to comfort someone with nothing but your presence. There's a small red cross stitched into your uniform, but even without it, they'd know who you are. They look for you with their eyes when they can't speak. They reach for you, sometimes in the dark. You've become something sacred on this battlefield. Not a soldier, not a priest, but something quieter, something necessary, something that tries, even in the worst moments, to bring a little mercy to the mud. Tonight, as dusk falls over the field, you sit just outside the tent, wrapping bandages for tomorrow's shift. Your fingers move slowly, methodically. Each strip of cloth feels like a promise, a preparation, a prayer. You can hear someone nearby softly playing a harmonica. The tune is low, slow, familiar, but it's not joyful. It's tender, like a memory wrapped in wool. You let it fill your ears as your hands continue their work. 1, 2, fold. 1, 2, fold. You think often about how many people you've touched, how many lives passed through your hands. You don't know their names, most of them, but you remember their faces, the freckles, the eyelashes, the ones who held on to your sleeve while you patched their chest, the ones who gave you their last letter and asked you to send it if you made it out. You carry them with you, not as weight but as warmth. Even now, sitting here beside the field, you feel them, not the pain, but the presence. You are part of something old, something human, something that stretches back through time healers, caretakers, silent watchers. And though your boots are caked in trench mud and your fingers cracked from cold, you feel deeply in your bones that this is your place. The stars come out one by one. The front is quiet for now. And as you sit there, the lanterns flicker inside the tent, the bandages folded in a soft little pile beside you. You allow yourself something rare, a breath, a long, slow breath, the kind that fills your lungs with something other than smoke, the kind that tells your heart, just for tonight, you are safe. You close your eyes and rest. The next morning begins not with a trumpet or a shout, but with the quiet creak of canvas and the faint smell of coffee burnt slightly, but warm enough to signal the start of another long day. You sit up on your cot, slowly pulling your blanket tighter around your shoulders as you listen to the low murmurs of the camp waking up. Around you, the world is still mostly shadows, with only the pale gray of early dawn creeping into the corners of the medical tent. Outside, frost has dusted the tips of the grass, and your breath turns to mist in the cool morning air. You rub your eyes with the back of your hand and slide your boots on one at a time, feeling the familiar pinch of old leather stretched thin by mud and weeks of wear. As you step outside, you take a moment to notice the quiet again. It's a strange kind of quiet one, born not of peace, but of the lull between chaos. You know that any hour could bring another wave of wounded, but for now there is only stillness. You walk to the supply tent with slow, careful steps, careful not to wake those still sleeping. Inside, shelves of gauze, antiseptic bottles, and water flasks are neatly stacked. You begin your morning task, restocking bandage rolls, boiling surgical tools, and checking the morphine inventory with a steady hand and a quiet mind. Every item has a place. Every moment has a rhythm. Later that morning, the first stretcher comes in. The man on it is quiet, his eyes half closed, his uniform torn along the sleeve where shrapnel has cut through. You kneel beside him, your voice low and steady, as you check for a pulse, Then gently press a cloth to the bleeding wound. Around you, two other medics move silently, one unrolling fresh bandages, the other preparing a suture kit. There are no loud voices here, no panic. You've all done this 100 times before. Every hand knows its role. Every action is deliberate. As you work, you find yourself focusing on the details. The way the light from the tent's side slants across the floor in long, golden stripes. The way your fingers move automatically to tie a tourniquet just tight enough, not too much. The way the wounded man exhales when you finally stitch the skin closed, his breath shivering with pain but easing into something quieter. You place your hand gently on his shoulder, your touch soft, reassuring. You whisper to him, just loud enough for him to hear, that he's going to be all right. You don't always know if it's true, but the comfort in the words matters all the same. After the wave of morning patience, you finally allow yourself a few moments to sit. You perch on a small wooden stool beside a box of wrapped linens, your hands resting in your lap, fingers still stained slightly pink from iodine. A nurse passes you a tin cup of weak tea, and you thank her with a nod. Together, you sit in shared silence, the kind that forms between people who have seen the same pain, the same resilience, the same flicker of life in the eyes of men who were never supposed to make it through the night. Sometimes words are too heavy, and sometimes stillness is the most healing sound. Midday comes slowly. The sun pushes its way through the fog, warming the tops of the tents and casting long shadows across the field. You remove your coat for a few minutes, letting your skin feel the rare touch of sunlight, and stretch your shoulders back to work out the knots. In this fragile lull, you walk the edge of the trenches with your medical pouch slung across your body, checking on the men who haven't yet come to the tent. Some have bruised ribs, some infected cuts. Some just need a hand on the shoulder and a few kind words to get through the afternoon. You kneel beside one soldier, barely older than a boy, who has a deep scrape across his forearm from climbing out of the trench too quickly. You clean the wound with soft cotton and wrap it in fresh linen, your voice a calming whisper as you ask about his family, his home, his favorite food before the war. He tells you about his sister's cherry pie, and you laugh quietly together, the kind of laughter that doesn't try too hard, just enough to remember what it feels like to be human again. Sometimes you wonder if that's your real job, not just stopping the bleeding, but stitching people back to themselves, reminding them that there is a world beyond this one, where things are warm and quiet and whole. A world with pies and books and mothers who hum lullabies while folding laundry. A world that feels impossibly far away, but never truly gone. As the afternoon wanes, a runner brings news of shelling just north of your station. You and two other medics prepare your stretchers, slinging them over your shoulders as you jog through the dirt paths that snake between sandbags and tangled barbed wire. The air smells of iron and smoke, and the ground is soft with churned up earth. You find the first man lying beside a collapsed dugout, his leg twisted unnaturally beneath him. With quiet urgency, you work with your team to lift him, brace his limb, and carry him gently back toward the tent, step by careful step. Inside the tent again, the rhythm picks up. The air thickens with movement, cloth tearing, boots shifting, voices low but fast. You keep your focus. Your breathing stays even. You wash your hands again and again, rubbing the cold water between your palms like a meditation. Between patients, you refill water jugs, organize salves, and relight the oil lamps that flicker as the daylight fades. Your world becomes a series of small, intentional acts, each one a promise to preserve, to ease, to protect. And as night falls once again over the field, and the wounded grow quiet in their cots, you walk slowly along the rows, checking each bandage, smoothing each blanket. Some of them are sleeping, some are pretending, some are staring up at the roof of the tent, eyes wide and quiet. You kneel beside one, a man with a bandage over half his face, and speak gently to him, not about the war, not about pain, but about home. You describe the smell of baking bread, the sound of rain tapping against a farmhouse roof, the way fresh sheets feel after a long day. You remind him what it's like to simply be ... warm. End of batch 2, approximately 2,000 words total. Outside the tent, the sky has turned to ink dark and thick, dotted only with the faintest stars breaking through the smoky clouds. The night air is colder now, and you pull your coat tighter as you step out for a moment of breath, letting the flap of the tent fall gently behind you. The silence feels different at night, heavier, like the world is holding its breath. Somewhere in the distance a low boom echoes across the horizon, far enough away not to bring panic, close enough to remind you that the quiet is always temporary. But here, for now, it is still. It is sacred. You walk a short distance from the tent to where the grass softens under your boots. There's a little spot behind a crumbling stone wall where you sometimes go to rest your mind. You sit down on the cold earth, hands in your lap, and listen to the hum of insects in the dark. You look up past the canvas roofs and the flickering lamplight into the deep quiet of the sky. It's strange to think how peaceful the stars are, untouched by the war below. The same stars the wounded once stared at before they were soldiers. The same stars you saw as a child from your window at home when everything still felt whole. You let your breath slow, in and out and in again, not to forget where you are, but to remember who you are. You are not the war. You are not the wounds. You are not the sorrow or the blood. You are the hands that heal, the voice that soothes, the presence that stays when others cannot. And that matters more than they ever told you. When you return to the tent, the kerosene lanterns glow softly, casting amber shadows on the canvas walls. You move from cot to cot, checking pulses, adjusting pillows, wetting lips with tiny sips of water. Each patient is a different kind of stillness. Some breathe with the slow rhythm of sleep, others with the ragged pace of pain. But you meet each moment with calm, with care, with kindness. There is a young soldier, maybe 17, curled beneath a threadbare blanket, eyes wide in the dim light. You sit beside him without a word, just letting your presence speak for itself. After a while, you offer him a sip of water, and he accepts with shaking hands. He doesn't ask questions. He doesn't cry. He just listens as you tell him a story not of the war, but of a seaside village far away, where the air smells like salt and lemon, and the wind rattles the shutters of little painted homes. You speak slowly, softly, describing the feel of warm sand between bare toes, the laughter of seagulls circling above, and the sweet tang of fresh berries from a street vendor's cart. He closes his eyes just a little, and that's enough. You learned early that healing isn't just about tending wounds. It's about offering moments of stillness, of memory, of imagined safety, a space for the heart to breathe again. Sometimes all someone needs is the sound of another voice, one that's not shouting or panicking, but simply existing beside them, soft and steady like the tide. Later, just before dawn, you hear footsteps approaching the tent. A runner arrives with a quiet request. Another outpost nearby has taken damage. Their medic is gone. They need help. Without hesitation, you grab your bag, refill your water flask, and slip your gloves into your coat pocket. The path to the post is narrow and winding, lit only by the faint glow of a rising moon. Your boots crunch over frost-hardened mud, and your breath comes in soft clouds. The outpost is smaller than yours, just 2 tents, and a dugout reinforced with timber. You duck inside, and instantly the smell of smoke and blood greets you. You nod to the officers standing nearby, and without needing to speak, you move to where you're needed. You kneel beside a man with a jagged gash across his thigh. His face is pale, his eyes fluttering. You press your hand to the wound, steadying it, then reach for your thread. As you stitch, you hum quietly, just a slow, tuneless rhythm. You hum because it calms your fingers, because it calms him, because it keeps the silence from sinking into your bones. Hours pass without you noticing. One by one, the injured are stabilized, wrapped, comforted. You move like a ghost, gentle, careful, patient. No one rushes you. There's no shouting here. Just the occasional sigh or the quiet clink of tools against tin. And as the sun finally begins to rise again, painting the tents in pale orange light, you step outside and let it warm your face. You close your eyes for just a second, not to sleep, just to feel the day beginning again. When you return to your own station later that morning, your feet are sore, your back stiff, but your heart carries a kind of soft fullness, the kind that comes from knowing you did what you could, that someone breathed easier because you were there. You sit down beside a basin of fresh water and remove your gloves, washing your hands slowly. The water runs pink at first, then clear. You dry your hands on a clean towel and reach for your journal, a small, cloth-bound book kept tucked beneath your cot. In quiet handwriting, you record what you saw, not the wounds, not the blood, but the way someone held their breath before you touched their shoulder, the way a soldier smiled at the taste of tea, the way a man who hadn't spoken in 3 days whispered the name of his wife just once before falling asleep. You write these things because they remind you that war does not take away all the softness, that even in places filled with pain, there are still moments of grace. End of batch 3, approximately 3,000 words total.
As the day continues, your body moves through its familiar routine with quiet precision. But your mind drifts gently elsewhere into memories, into reflections, into the quiet space between doing and feeling. Every patient becomes a story, and every task you perform becomes a gesture of connection. You aren't just tending to flesh, you're tending to the invisible weight these soldiers carry: grief, longing, fear, exhaustion. They don't always speak it aloud, but you can feel it in the way they squeeze your hand or hold their breath before you touch their skin. Sometimes when the tent falls into stillness, you whisper things meant more for the soul than the body. You remind them that morning always comes, that pain does not mean they are alone, that even here in this forgotten corner of the world, someone sees them as more than just a wound. Outside, a light rain begins to fall soft, gentle, rhythmic. You pause in the doorway and close your eyes, listening to the way the drops patter against the canvas roof, the wooden crates, the cold tin mugs left on the tables. Rain has a way of quieting everything, smoothing the edges of the day. You feel the damp settle into your sleeves, but you don't mind. For a moment, you just stand there, letting the cool mist settle on your face, breathing in the scent of wet earth and distant smoke. Even here, even now, there is beauty. By mid-afternoon, a wagon arrives from another sector, carrying 2 wounded men and a young medic who looks barely older than a schoolboy. His face is pale, his uniform soaked with blood that is not his own. You meet his eyes as he steps down, and there's a silence between you, one medic to another, that doesn't need words. You guide him into the tent, help him wash the blood from his hands, offer him water and a dry coat. He sits quietly for a while, staring at nothing, and you sit beside him, not speaking, just being. Sometimes presence is the greatest comfort. When he finally speaks, his voice is soft, shaky. "I thought I could save him," you nod, your gaze still on the flickering lantern ahead of you. "We always do," you say, "and that's why we stay." He breathes in slowly, then again, and then finally he nods. You go back to work together, side by side, showing him how to rewrap a bandage, how to soothe a soldier with more than just medicine. You guide his hands when they tremble. You steady his voice when it falters. You watch quietly as he begins to find his rhythm again, tired but there. That evening, as twilight bleeds into the corners of the tent, a soldier with a fractured arm asks you about your own life. It's rare for someone to ask. Most are too lost in their own thoughts. But this one seems calm, curious. You smile a little as you clean the edge of the cast. "Used to work in a bakery," you tell him. "Back home, my hands were always dusted with flour, not blood." He laughs, just a little, then winces at the movement. You both laugh softly at that. "I miss the smell of fresh bread," he says. "I miss the quiet." You nod. "There's a kind of quiet here," you say. Different, heavier, but sometimes still beautiful. After he sleeps, you take your journal back out. You write about the young medic, about the bakery, about the rain. Your handwriting is slow, careful, almost like embroidery, threading meaning into the page. You don't write to remember facts, you write to remember feelings, to capture the softness before it slips away. That night, just before you lie down to rest, you take one last walk through the tent. Some of the wounded are dreaming, murmuring words to loved ones far away. One man is whispering what sounds like a prayer, his fingers twitching lightly on his blanket. You adjust the corners, make sure he's warm, and whisper a prayer of your own. Not for victory, not for glory, just for peace. When you lie on your cot wrapped in your coat, you let your eyes close slowly. You think of home, of the bakery, the smell of warm bread, and the early morning hum of the oven. You think of the stars above the tent, still glowing, still watching. And you feel something small, something soft, settle inside your chest. Not joy, exactly, but peace. A fragile kind of peace that can only exist when you've given everything you can, and know that for tonight it was enough. And so you sleep. Not because the world is safe, not because the work is over, but because even here, even now, your hands have made something gentle. And that in itself is a kind of rest.
Sleep, when it comes, is never deep in the medical tent, but it is soft, it is quiet. You dream not of battles or screams or blood, but of hands kneading dough in the early morning light, of sun-warmed stones outside a cottage wall, of laughter echoing in alleyways before you even knew what a war was. These are the dreams your mind reaches for, memories layered with comfort, carried like a folded handkerchief in your pocket. They drift through your sleep like smoke, curling gently around the silence. But before long, the light shifts. The tent brightens with the first hints of dawn, and your eyes open slowly. You rise without complaint. Your body has learned this rhythm: wake, move, serve, rest when you can. You stretch your shoulders, roll your neck, and lace your boots by habit more than thought. The world outside is still gray with dew, the mist curling low over the earth like a woolen blanket left out overnight. You breathe it in. You let it fill your lungs and clear the last bits of sleep from your bones. The first wounded of the day arrived just after sunrise, 2 men. walking with arms slung around each other's shoulders, boots caked in mud, faces slack with fatigue. One limps from a twisted ankle. The other has a deep cut along his cheek. Neither complains. You guide them into the tent, your voice gentle, movements slow, and begin the familiar ritual. Warm water, clean cloth, a touch to the forehead. You speak little, only what is needed, letting the quiet do most of the healing. You've learned that words can be heavy when someone is barely holding themselves upright. But a hand on the shoulder, a small nod, a moment of stillness that can hold more comfort than 100 sentences. Throughout the morning, the camp stirs to life. Nurses move softly between the beds, their steps deliberate, their presence calm. One of them hums under her breath as she wraps a dressing, a tune with no words but full of memory. Someone brews a pot of chicory coffee on a small burner. You drink a cup slowly, the warmth spreading through your fingers. It's bitter, but familiar, and sometimes familiarity is the greatest comfort of all. Today brings no major shelling, no panic, just a steady flow of small wounds, twisted knees, fevers, and exhausted young men with hollow eyes. You move among them like a caretaker of ghosts, offering blankets, fresh socks, a few quiet words about nothing in particular. One soldier asks you if you think the war will be over soon. You don't answer right away. Instead, you sit beside him and ask where he's from. He tells you about his family farm, his little sister's freckles, his father's laugh. By the time he finishes, he doesn't ask the question again. Sometimes hope doesn't come from an answer, it comes from being heard. Later, a nurse brings you a stack of letters left behind by soldiers too injured to write, and you help dictate their words. You sit beside each man, listening closely as they whisper their thoughts haltingly, sometimes tearfully, into your ear. You write slowly, carefully, shaping each word like something sacred. "Tell her I'm all right," one says. "Tell her not to worry." Another just asks you to write down a poem he made up the night before. It's not a good poem, but it's beautiful in its own way, stitched together from memories and longing. When you finish each letter, you read it aloud to them in a soft, steady voice. Then you fold the paper, slip it into the envelope, and promise to send it. By the time the sun reaches its peak, the tent is warm and quiet again. The wounded rest. The nurses sit for a moment. You take the opportunity to wash your tools, lining each one neatly on a clean cloth. Scissors, forceps, needles. You handle them with the same care you'd give to something breakable. They are extensions of your hands, now shaped by repetition, by experience, by necessity. You clean them not just for hygiene, but out of respect. These instruments have held pain. They have carried hope. They have meant the difference between goodbye and goodnight. In the late afternoon, a man is brought in unconscious pale, breathing shallow. You and two others work quickly, methodically. You do not panic. You do not speak more than you must. You lift his shirt, find the wound, pack it gently. You press your palm to his chest, feeling the flutter of life like a distant echo. You whisper his name, even though he hasn't given it. Just something human, something grounding. He does not wake, but he does not go either. And for now, that is enough. When the work is done, you step outside again. The sky is streaked with orange and lavender, and the breeze carries the scent of smoke and pine. You sit beneath a crooked tree, its roots twisted in the soil, and lean your back against the trunk. Your eyes fall closed, but you do not sleep. You simply rest. You let the quiet wrap around you like a cloak. You listen to the earth breathing. You think about the lives you've touched, how many voices you've heard, how many stories have passed through your tent. You remember their faces, their laughter, their silence. You carry them gently, never as burdens, but as reminders, that even in a place shaped by war, there is still space for tenderness, for gentleness, for care. And as the sun dips below the hills, casting long shadows across the field, you rise once more, because there is always more to do, because your hands still hold warmth, because someone somewhere is waiting for your quiet presence, your steady voice, your calm. You return to the tent, and the lanterns flicker to life one by one. Night begins again, but this time it meets you gently, and within its hush you begin again, one breath, one step, one patient at a time. The lantern light casts long shadows on the canvas walls, and the tent now glows like a great heart pulsing gently in the dark. You move softly through the rows of cots, adjusting bandages here, tucking in blankets there. Many of the men are asleep, some with brows furrowed in uneasy dreams, others with lips parted, breathing deep and slow. There's a peacefulness in this hour, this in-between place where the body begins to heal and the mind drifts somewhere beyond the battlefield. You treasure this hour. It is when the tent feels more like a chapel than a hospital, and you, moving silently through it, feel not like a medic, but like a candle keeper tending flames too fragile to speak, too sacred to name. There's a rhythm to everything now. The way you fill basins with warm water. The way you check for fever with the back of your hand. The way you whisper, "You're safe now," to those half-conscious and trembling. You hum again, quietly, without realizing it, a low, slow melody that has no beginning and no end. A tune passed down from silence itself. Sometimes the patients stir at the sound, but not in alarm. They settle into it, as if it speaks to something older than fear. Near the back of the tent, you sit beside an older soldier, his beard peppered with gray, eyes closed, mouth turned downward in exhaustion. His leg is bandaged, his arm wrapped to his chest in a sling. You check his pulse gently, then sit for a while without doing anything else. You've learned that sometimes being beside someone is more healing than anything you can pour, mix, or apply. He opens his eyes halfway and meets your gaze. "You remind me of my son," he says, voice raspy. "He's only 12. You nod and smile, your voice barely above a breath. "Then I'll stay beside you a little longer." He doesn't answer, but the corner of his mouth lifts slightly. It is enough. You rise and return to your small table, where your tools lie neatly rolled in a cloth pouch. You refill your supplies with practiced ease, more gauze, clean bandages, a new flask of antiseptic. Everything has its place. Everything has a reason. The tent door flutters open, and a night nurse enters, rubbing her hands together for warmth. She smiles at you in that way people do when words aren't needed, acknowledging not just your presence, but your purpose. Together you check on the night's most fragile patients, those who've just arrived, those whose pain is worst, those who are waiting for sleep to take them gently. One is barely 20, his arm shattered in 3 places, his breath shallow and quick. You sit by him, placing a warm compress on his chest, and speak to him about things far from war, about the sound of snow on the roof of a schoolhouse, about fishing poles and willow trees, about the smell of biscuits just out of the oven. You tell him these things so he remembers what he's made of, so he remembers who he was before this place. Eventually his breathing slows and his body settles. Later you step outside once more. The sky above is clear now, the stars shining crisp and sharp above the field. You tilt your head back and study them, picking out constellations the way you used to as a child. Orion's Belt, the silent arc of Cassiopeia. You imagine what the stars must look like from home reflected in rivers, glinting off rooftops, watched by those who love and wait and wonder. For a moment you let yourself wonder too, not about war or wounds or what tomorrow will bring, but about the lives you'll return to, the garden left untended, the neighbor's laughter through the wall, the way your favorite shoes squeak in the hallway. These things feel impossibly distant, and yet tonight they feel reachable, like a hand extended across time. Back inside, you sit beside the stove and wrap your hands around a chipped enamel mug filled with broth. It's not much, but it's warm. You sip it slowly, letting the heat move through your body like a quiet thread, stitching together the unraveling edges of your energy. Around you, the tent is peaceful, the kind of peace that's earned, not given. You rest your head against the wooden post and close your eyes for a few moments, not to sleep, but to listen to the breaths of the living, the heartbeat of the tent, the soft shuffle of boots outside. There's a kind of holiness in this life, a gentle, warm holiness, built not from sermons or scripture, but from repetition and service. You find it in the way you fold a bandage, in the weight of a hand on a shoulder, in the silent promise you offer every time you whisper, "I'm here." And tonight, surrounded by the hush of resting bodies and the golden flicker of oil lamps, that holiness feels strong, not loud, not grand, but strong. You return to your cot just before midnight. You take off your boots, rub your tired feet, and stretch out beneath your wool blanket. It's cold at first, but your body warms the space quickly. You pull your coat over your chest and sigh. A long, slow sigh that releases the weight of the day without needing to name it. Your journal lies beside you, but you don't reach for it. Not tonight. Tonight, the story doesn't need to be written. It's already in your hands, your breath, your quiet knowing. And as your eyes begin to drift closed, you hear nothing but the soft murmur of night, the wind pressing against the tent, the distant sound of a sentry's boots crunching on gravel, and the slow, steady breath of the sleeping. You allow yourself to fall into that rhythm, to be cradled by it, to become part of the silence that heals. Morning arrives not with fanfare, but with the slow rising of soft light across the canvas roof above you. The glow is golden, filtered by dust and age, and your eyes blink open gently to meet it. You stretch under the weight of your coat, the stiffness in your joints a quiet reminder of all you carried the day before. You sit up slowly, rubbing your palms together to warm them, and feel the familiar ache in your back. Not painful. Exactly, just warm, like leather creased by use. Outside you hear the low murmur of voices, the clinking of tin cups, and the occasional laugh, tired but real. You rise and fold your blanket neatly, smoothing the corners of your cot. You do this every morning, a small ritual that helps you feel human again. You wash your face in the basin near the entrance, splashing cold water over your skin, then drying it with a threadbare towel. There's a kind of refreshment in that first rinse, even if the water smells faintly of iron and old soap. It wakes your senses, readies you for another day, another 100 small acts of mercy. The breakfast is plain, just a crust of bread and weak tea, but you eat slowly, savoring each bite. There's a comfort in the predictability, in the routine. Your hands are steady again now, ready to work, and as the sun continues to rise, so too does the gentle rhythm of the day. The first patient is already sitting up when you walk the line, an older man with a stitched brow and kind eyes. You greet him softly, and he smiles in return. You remove the dressing from his wound and clean the stitches, talking as you work, telling him about the early morning frost, about the way the mist hugged the field like an old friend. He listens, nods, and closes his eyes not from pain, but from calm. You give him a little extra tea and tuck the blanket tighter around his chest. The hours pass as they always do, not rushed, not slow, just full. A steady stream of movement, of hands and breath, of whispers and cloth and steam. You help reset a dislocated shoulder. You mix a salve for trench foot. You hold the hand of a man who's been awake for too long and needs someone to carry the quiet for him. Your feet grow tired, but your spirit holds steady, fed by each moment of connection, each soft thank you, each sigh of relief. By midday, the sun breaks through the haze, casting stripes of warmth across the field outside. You step into the light for just a minute, letting it touch your face. There's a sweetness to the way it kisses your skin, and you close your eyes to feel it more deeply. You hear bees in the distance, birds calling softly to one another in the hedgerows. For a fleeting moment, it feels like a summer morning before the war, a world unchanged. You hold that moment like a breath. Later, a soldier asks you if you believe the war will be remembered. You pause, holding the roll of bandages in your hand, and then nod slowly. It will, you whisper. Not just the battles, but the people, the quiet moments. The ones who helped even when they were scared. The ones who gave comfort even when they had none left to give. He doesn't respond right away, but you see the thought settle behind his eyes, and you both return to silence, not because there's nothing to say, but because the space between words is sometimes more sacred. That evening you gather the soiled linens and bring them to the washing tent. Steam rises in thick clouds as water boils in great metal tubs. You roll up your sleeves, plunge your arms into the hot, soapy water, and begin to scrub. It is hard work, but satisfying. As the stains lift, you feel something in you lifting too. The dirt, the blood, the heaviness. It's not erased, but transformed. You rinse, wring, and hang each cloth with care, watching as they flap softly in the breeze, like white flags of surrender waving over a field of rest. As the sun begins to lower again, you visit the triage tent, checking on the new arrivals. Some are sleeping, some are moaning quietly in pain, some just stare. You move among them like a shadow offering water, adjusting bandages, cooling hot foreheads with damp cloths. There is one boy, barely 18, shivering under a coarse blanket. You sit beside him and hold his hand in yours, rubbing slow circles into the back of his palm. He doesn't speak. His lips tremble. You murmur to him about the sea, about warm kitchens, about the smell of pine trees after rain. His breathing begins to slow, and eventually he drifts off, still holding your hand. That night, the stars return clearer than the night before, sharp as needles against the velvet sky. You find yourself standing outside again, hands tucked into your coat pockets, watching the constellations shift. They've watched over soldiers for thousands of years, over farmers, over kings, and now over you. You wonder how many medics stood just like this through history, beneath this very sky. You feel part of something larger than time, a long line of those who chose to heal, even in the heart of destruction. And when you return to your cot, tired, sore, quiet, you find your journal waiting. You open it and write just one sentence. Today I stayed, that's all. But it's enough, because staying matters. Quietly, steadily, softly. You lie down, cover yourself with your coat, and turn to face the canvas wall. Your breath is slow, your body still. And as the tent darkens once more, the hush settles over you like a lullaby. You sleep not because the war has ended, but because in your small corner of it there is peace. The next morning begins with rain soft and steady, tapping against the canvas in a rhythm that feels almost like breathing. You lie still for a moment, listening to it, letting the sound soak into you like warmth. It's the kind of rain that hushes everything else, the kind that makes time slow down. You stay under your blanket a few moments longer than usual, your eyes half closed, your thoughts far away. The war feels quiet in the rain, as if even it must pause and listen. Eventually you rise. The tent is dim and hushed, filled with the scent of damp earth and boiled linen. You move with the same care as always, washing your hands, straightening your cot, tying your boots. You sip a bit of tea, now lukewarm, from a chipped mug, and wrap your coat tighter around your chest before stepping out into the rain. The water drips from the edges of the canvas roof, pooling softly in the grooves of the mud. Your boots sink with every step, but you don't mind. There's something calming about the earth being soft again after all the noise. A few patients have woken already. One, a wiry man with a bandaged neck, is quietly writing a letter with his left hand, his right still bound in a sling. Another is playing solitaire with a worn deck of cards, the corners soft from use. You smile gently at both and begin your rounds. The work is the same, but the mood is different. The rain casts a gentler spell on the day. Voices are quieter, movements slower. Even the wounded seem more still, like they too are listening. By mid-morning, a group of new arrivals has brought in 3 stretcher-bound, 2 walking with arms around each other's shoulders. You help guide them inside one by one, keeping your voice low, your touch steady. The worst among them is unconscious, his breathing shallow, a thick bandage already wrapped around his side. You and another medic exchange glances and move quickly into rhythm, one checking his pulse, the other preparing the instruments. You work without panic. Your hands have learned how to be calm, even when your heart races. You murmur words that may not reach him, but they help you focus. You're all right. We're here. Just hold on. Later, you take a moment to rest. You sit beneath the edge of the tent's awning, where the rain still falls in soft curtains before you. You hold a cup of broth in your hands, sipping it slowly, letting the steam rise up into your face. Your shoulders sag a little, not from defeat, but from the sheer weight of keeping things gentle in a place built from sharpness. It's a kind of strength no one talks about. The strength of choosing softness over and over again, even when everything around you hardens. A nurse sits beside you and shares half an apple she's saved from breakfast. It's tart and a little wrinkled, but you eat it together like it's a feast. You talk quietly about home, about trees blooming in spring, about neighbors you haven't seen in years, about the kind of silence that lives in libraries. She laughs at one of your stories, her hand resting lightly on her knee, and for a moment the war fades entirely. You are simply two people sitting beneath a rainy sky, sharing something real. In the afternoon, you help repair one of the field cots that started to collapse from use. You find a bit of wood, some twine, and a small knife, and kneel beside it like a craftsman at work. There's something grounding about fixing things, even in small ways. The act of mending, not just wounds, but objects, feels like a statement. That things can break and still be made whole again. That usefulness isn't lost with wear. That care itself is an act of defiance. Later, you help a soldier shave. His hands are too unsteady, so you fill a bowl with warm water, lather a bit of soap, and hold the blade with gentle precision. He watches you in the cracked mirror held up by a wire frame, eyes following your movements carefully. "First shave in 3 weeks," he says, voice hoarse. You smile and nod. "Might as well look handsome while we heal," you reply. He chuckles, the sound catching in his throat, and you both fall into a quiet rhythm. The scrape of the blade, the splash of water, the slow reawakening of something that feels like dignity. As the sun sets and the rain begins to thin, you walk the edge of the camp, your boots soft against the damp earth. The trees at the perimeter sway gently, and in the distance you hear a nightingale clear, distinct, impossibly beautiful. It stops you in your tracks. A song like that, in a place like this, it feels like a miracle. You close your eyes and just listen, letting the sound wash over you, letting it fill in all the cracks left by the day. When you return to the tent, the lanterns are already lit. The beds are full, but calm. You move through your final rounds with the same gentle touch, the same quiet care. You straighten pillows, adjust bandages, offer sips of water in the warmth of your hand. And with each act, you feel a kind of quiet purpose filling your chest soft but unshakable. This is who you are. Not just a medic, but a vessel of calm in a world turned inside out. When you finally lie down to sleep, the rain has stopped. The air smells clean, the night cool and clear. You pull your coat over your chest and listen to the tent settle around you, fabric creaking gently, footsteps fading into the distance. One last cough at the far end, followed by silence. You close your eyes and let your breath slow. And as sleep takes you once more, it feels like slipping into something warm and known. You dream not of war, but of light, of hands healed, of voices soothed, of peace blooming quietly in a field of mud. The next morning begins with rain soft and steady, tapping against the canvas in a rhythm that feels almost like breathing. You lie still for a moment, listening to it, letting the sound soak into you like warmth. It's the kind of rain that hushes everything else, the kind that makes time slow down. You stay under your blanket a few moments longer than usual, your eyes half closed, your thoughts far away. The war feels quiet in the rain, as if even it must pause and listen. Eventually you rise. The tent is dim and hushed, filled with the scent of damp earth and boiled linen. You move with the same care as always, washing your hands, straightening your cot, tying your boots. You sip a bit of tea, now lukewarm, from a chipped mug, and wrap your coat tighter around your chest before stepping out into the rain. The water drips from the edges of the canvas roof, pooling softly in the grooves of the mud. Your boots sink with every step, but you don't mind. There's something calming about the earth being soft again after all the noise. A few patients have woken already. One, a wiry man with a bandaged neck, is quietly writing a letter with his left hand, his right still bound in a sling. Another is playing solitaire with a worn deck of cards, the corners soft from use. You smile gently at both and begin your rounds. The work is the same, but the mood is different. The rain casts a gentler spell on the day. Voices are quieter, movements slower. Even the wounded seem more still, like they too are listening. By mid-morning, a group of new arrivals has brought in 3 stretcher-bound, 2 walking with arms around each other's shoulders. You help guide them inside one by one, keeping your voice low, your touch steady. The worst among them is unconscious, his breathing shallow, a thick bandage already wrapped around his side. You and another medic exchange glances and move quickly into rhythm one, checking his pulse, the other preparing the instruments. You work without panic. Your hands have learned how to be calm, even when your heart races. You murmur words that may not reach him, but they help you focus. You're all right. We're here. Just hold on. Later, you take a moment to rest. You sit beneath the edge of the tent's awning, where the rain still falls in soft curtains before you. You hold a cup of broth in your hands, sipping it slowly, letting the steam rise up into your face. Your shoulders sag a little, not from defeat, but from the sheer weight of keeping things gentle in a place built from sharpness. It's a kind of strength no one talks about. The strength of choosing softness over and over again, even when everything around you hardens. A nurse sits beside you and shares half an apple she saved from breakfast. It's tart and a little wrinkled, but you eat it together like it's a feast. You talk quietly about home, about trees blooming in spring, about neighbors you haven't seen in years, about the kind of silence that lives in libraries. She laughs at one of your stories, her hand resting lightly on her knee, and for a moment the war fades entirely. You are simply 2 people sitting beneath a rainy sky, sharing something real. In the afternoon, you help repair one of the field cots that started to collapse from use. You find a bit of wood, some twine, and a small knife, and kneel beside it like a craftsman at work. There's something grounding about fixing things, even in small ways. The act of mending, not just wounds, but objects, feels like a statement. That things can break and still be made whole again. That usefulness isn't lost with wear. That care itself is an act of defiance. Later, you help a soldier shave. His hands are too unsteady, so you fill a bowl with warm water, lather a bit of soap, and hold the blade with gentle precision. He watches you in the cracked mirror held up by a wire frame, eyes following your movements carefully. "First shave in 3 weeks," he says, voice hoarse. You smile and nod. "Might as well look handsome while we heal," you reply. He chuckles, the sound catching in his throat, and you both fall into a quiet rhythm. The scrape of the blade, the splash of water, the slow reawakening of something that feels like dignity. As the sun sets and the rain begins to thin, you walk the edge of the camp, your boots soft against the damp earth. The trees at the perimeter sway gently, and in the distance you hear a nightingale clear, distinct, impossibly beautiful. It stops you in your tracks. A song like that, in a place like this, it feels like a miracle. You close your eyes and just listen, letting the sound wash over you, letting it fill in all the cracks left by the day. When you return to the tent, the lanterns are already lit. The beds are full, but calm. You move through your final rounds with the same gentle touch, the same quiet care. You straighten pillows, adjust bandages, offer sips of water in the warmth of your hand. And with each act, you feel a kind of quiet purpose filling your chest soft but unshakable. This is who you are. Not just a medic, but a vessel of calm in a world turned inside out. When you finally lie down to sleep, the rain has stopped. The air smells clean, the night cool and clear. You pull your coat over your chest and listen to the tent settle around you, fabric creaking gently, footsteps fading into the distance. One last cough at the far end, followed by silence. You close your eyes and let your breath slow. And as sleep takes you once more, it feels like slipping into something warm and known. You dream not of war, but of light, of hands healed, of voices soothed, of peace blooming quietly in a field of mud. Your sleep is deep this time, anchored, not in exhaustion, but in fulfillment. You drift in dreams where the war never began, where the fields are green with tall grass, and the tents are filled not with wounded, but with laughter and stories. You dream of healing that isn't rushed, of days that stretch long and quiet, of people you've helped, now standing strong, waving to you from the other side of some gentle, imagined hill. And when the morning finally comes, it carries with it a kind of softness that only dreams can leave behind, a lightness in your chest, a calm in your limbs, a slowness in your breath. You open your eyes to the low orange glow of dawn, and the first sound you hear is bird song clear and sharp, like silver thread woven through the morning air. You sit up and stretch, rolling your shoulders, then rub the sleep from your eyes with the backs of your hands. The tent is quiet, peacefully so. Some of the men are still sleeping. Others stir gently beneath their blankets. You rise quietly, boots crunching faintly against the packed earth floor, and begin preparing for another day. There is no sense of dread, only steady resolve. You start with water clean, hot, poured into a basin. You roll up your sleeves and begin washing cloths and tools, humming under your breath as steam swirls into the still chilly air. This is one of your favorite moments of the day, before the rush, before the shouting, before anything is asked of you. Just water, cloth, breath, a kind of moving meditation. A soft beginning. Soon after, the first patient of the morning calls your name. It's a young man with his leg wrapped tight from hip to ankle. You bring him fresh compresses and sit at his side, unwrapping the layers slowly. He winces, but stays silent. You smile gently and tell him it's all right to make noise. Pain has to go somewhere, you say, and better out than in. He chuckles faintly, the sound strained but real. As you tend to the wound, you ask him what he wants to eat when he gets home. Without hesitation, he says pork stew with the good bread. My mother bakes it on Sundays. You promise him he'll have it again. He nods. He believes you. You move on. Patient by patient, cot by cot, a soldier with cracked ribs, another with a broken wrist, a quiet man who doesn't speak, but holds your hand whenever you come near. You clean, you wrap, you reassure. You ask about sisters and dogs and music. You share a few jokes. One man recites a poem he remembers from school. You pretend to forget the last line just so he'll repeat it. Everyone laughs quietly when he corrects you. These are the moments you live for, not the grand victories, but the small recoveries. the smiles that return, the shoulders that soften. The men who sit up just a little straighter when you walk in. Later that day, the air turns thick and warm. You open the tent flaps to let the breeze in, and the scent of clover wafts to you. For a moment, the hospital smells like a meadow. A nurse brings you a cloth soaked in rose water, and you dab it against your neck, grateful for the coolness. Around you, the wounded are quieter than usual, tired, but healing. Some play cards. Others write letters. A few sleep without turning, without murmuring. Real sleep, restful, deep. In the quiet lull, you take time to clean and repack your satchel. The leather is worn and soft, its shape molded to your hip from long days of wear. Inside, your tools are arranged like old friends, bandage scissors, salve tins, a roll of surgical thread. You clean each one with care, polishing the steel until it gleams faintly in the light. You fold new cloths. You refill small bottles. The satchel isn't just your kit, it's your language. Your way of saying, "I've got you," without words. That afternoon, the calm is broken briefly when a courier arrives with a fresh wave of wounded from a nearby trench. The soldiers are quiet, staring straight ahead, blank-eyed, dirt still crusted in their hair and beneath their nails. You move swiftly, helping them lie down, removing boots with practiced hands, washing away blood and soil. One soldier has a wound across his back, and you kneel behind him to clean it, your fingers careful, your breath steady. He flinches at first, then relaxes under your touch. "Feels like home," he whispers. You blink. The words settle in your chest like a warm stone in water. You don't respond. You just keep working, slower now, gentler. After they are stable, after the dust settles and the tent returns to its rhythm, you step outside for a few moments of quiet. The breeze has picked up, rustling the grass and bending the tall weeds along the field's edge. You walk a little way from camp and sit beneath the same leaning tree as before. The wildflowers are still there, now damp with dew, their petals folded slightly in the heat. You run your fingers along the bark of the tree, feeling its rough, weathered skin. You think about how many storms it's seen, how it hasn't broken yet. Neither have you. Back in the tent, you light the evening lanterns and pass around cups of wheat broth to anyone awake. The warm liquid soothes sore throats and hungry bellies, and the soft clinking of spoons becomes the only sound for a while. Someone asks you if it's true that war makes people stronger. You pause for a long time before answering. Then, slowly, you say, "War doesn't make you strong. What you do in spite of it does." The tent is quiet after that, a respectful quiet, a thoughtful quiet. You begin your final rounds by candlelight. One man asks you to sing something, anything. You hesitate, then hum the tune you've always turned to, the one your mother sang when storms rolled in at night. The notes are slow and low, like the sound of water over stones. By the time you finish, he is asleep. Others are too. Some pretend not to be, just so they can hear the end of the lullaby. You lie down once more, exhausted but full. Your journal remains closed tonight. You have nothing new to write, but everything is already written in your hands, in your breath, in the way you show up each day. And as you pull the blanket to your chin, you smile softly to yourself and think, "This is enough. This is more than enough." Sleep comes to you easily that night, as if your body knows it is safe, even if only for a little while. You sink into your cot, your muscles relaxing with each slow breath. The sounds of the night tent around you comforting in their repetition. A soft cough from one corner. The rustle of someone shifting under their blanket. The occasional creak of canvas in the wind. All of it wraps around you like a lullaby, familiar and forgiving. Your dreams are quiet this time. Not of faraway places or impossible endings, but of this place as it is, but softer. You dream of the tent glowing from within, of every soldier resting peacefully, of your hands moving gently from one to the next, not to stop pain, but to offer peace. A kind of healing that doesn't need stitching or salves, just presence. You wake before the sun. The air is cool and still, and the sky outside the tent has only just begun to shift from black to deep blue. You sit up and stretch your back, taking a moment to orient yourself. It's a small, precious hour, one you treasure for its quiet. You make your way to the basin, splash water on your face, and dry it with a towel hung neatly nearby. The scent of damp canvas and old wood fills your nose. It's not pleasant in the usual sense, but it's familiar, and sometimes familiarity is comfort. You move through the tent slowly, checking on the men still asleep. You don't touch them, not yet, you just look, making sure each chest rises and falls, making sure each brow is free from sweat, making sure the peace of sleep hasn't slipped from their grasp. Most are resting well. A few murmur softly, caught in the remnants of dreams. You adjust a blanket, retrieve a fallen canteen, smooth the corner of a pillow. These gestures are small, almost invisible, but they matter. They remind the wounded, even in sleep, that someone is watching over them. The sun rises gently, spreading light through the thin fabric of the tent walls. A warm gold creeps in, catching on metal bedposts and the rims of water basins. You open the front flap to let in the breeze, and with it comes the scent of grass warming in the sun, of distant fires just being lit. You breathe it in slowly, letting it fill your lungs and clear the last fog of sleep from your head. Another day has begun, and you are ready. As the others begin to wake, you prepare for morning rounds. Water is boiled, cloths are soaked and wrung. The day's clean bandages are stacked and sorted. Your hands move automatically, but your mind is calm, your heart steady. Each item you touch is part of a ritual, a promise, the rhythm of care. You begin with the soldier closest to the door, a man with a stitched shoulder and bruises blooming across his ribs. You greet him quietly and begin removing the bandage, working with gentle, practiced hands. He winces slightly but doesn't speak. You offer him a sip of water and ask him to tell you a story. Any story, you say, real or not. After a pause, he tells you about a dog he used to have, a black and white mutt that followed him everywhere. As you clean his shoulder, he describes how the dog would bark at birds, chase after carts, and once stole a pie, cooling on a neighbor's windowsill. You laugh softly. So does he. By the time the wound is redressed, his brow is no longer furrowed. His voice has steadied. His memories have soothed him. You move from cot to cot, wrapping and washing and listening. Some men want to talk. Others want silence. You give both freely. One man asks if you remember his brother who passed through the tent 2 weeks ago. You do. You remember his freckles, his quiet voice, the way he always offered his food to others before eating. The man nods and looks away, tears in his eyes. You sit beside him, saying nothing, your hand resting gently on his forearm. He does not cry. He simply breathes. And eventually he says, "Thank you." You squeeze his arm in return. That is enough. As the morning rolls into midday, the sun climbs higher, and the tent grows warm. A breeze drifts through the open flap, carrying with it bits of dust and the scent of blooming weeds. A nurse fans herself with a folded note, smiling faintly as she passes you a cup of cool water. You take it gratefully, your throat dry from hours of quiet talking. You both sit for a moment near the supply crates, sharing the silence like a shaded bench in summer. A boy 16 at most is brought in by stretcher. His eyes are wide, lips trembling, though no blood shows on his uniform. You kneel beside him and ask where it hurts. He only whispers, "I can't breathe." You take his hand, feel his pulse fast, but steady, and speak to him softly. You tell him to match your breathing in and out, slow and steady. "You're here now," you say. "You're safe. You made it." His breathing slows. His eyes focus. You realize he is not wounded in body, but in mind. And that's a wound, too. One that needs just as much care. You stay with him until he closes his eyes, his hand still holding yours like a rope in a current. Later, the wounded sleep again, and the tent becomes quiet. You take your satchel outside and sit beneath the same tree, the one that leans a little more with each passing week. Its roots feel solid beneath you, its leaves whispering in the breeze. You close your eyes and let yourself drift not into sleep, but into that soft space between presence and thought. The world narrows to breath, to bird song, to the feeling of earth beneath your boots. And for a while, that is all you need. When you return, the tent is bathed in warm evening light. The lanterns haven't been lit yet, but everything glows gold and amber. You go about your evening tasks with calm changing dressings, writing down names, tucking in corners of blankets. One man is reading a letter out loud to himself, slowly, sounding out the words. You pause beside him to listen. He glances up and says, "My wife writes like a poet." You nod. She does. And when night comes and the sky outside deepens to navy, you light the lanterns one by one, their soft flames flickering like stars fallen to earth. You make your final rounds, offer your final comforts, speak your final words of reassurance. Then you lie down once more, your coat pulled over your chest, your journal closed at your side. And as sleep comes, it carries with it the sound of wind and leaves, of a boy whispering thank you, of a dog chasing birds across a memory. And in your heart, that quiet voice speaks again, "This was a good day." And it was enough. The night passes gently, the kind where nothing stirs too loudly, and even the wind seems to tread carefully. You sleep as one who is given everything, your body resting in stillness, your breath deep and even. In your dreams, you hear laughter soft and familiar and smell baking bread, feel warm floors beneath bare feet, and see a door open to fields filled with sunlight. It is not a place you know exactly, but it feels like home. And when you wake, before dawn has fully broken, you carry that warmth with you like a coal in your chest, quiet, glowing, constant. You sit up slowly, stretching your arms overhead. The tent is cool and shadowed, lit only by the faintest blue-gray hue of morning. You pull your coat around your shoulders and listen. The others are asleep, some breathing deeply, others murmuring softly, lost in dreams. You rise without sound, careful not to wake them, and make your way to the water basin. The touch of cold water on your face brings you fully into the moment. You close your eyes and stand still for just a breath longer, letting the silence cradle you. The first thing you do today is light a small stove, placing a kettle on top and waiting for the water to boil. The scent of smoke curls through the tent, blending with the earthy smells of wool, metal, and steam. You prepare the morning cloths while the water heats rolling fresh bandages, laying out antiseptic, stacking strips of folded linen like pages in a quiet book. Your hands move on their own now, skilled and unhurried, like the hands of someone who's learned that every act of care is a kind of prayer. Soon the tent begins to stir. A few patients awaken, stretching or coughing gently, blinking up at the dim roof above them. You greet each with a nod or a soft word, asking if they slept well, if they're warm enough. One man asks if it's Tuesday. You don't know. The days have long since blurred into one another. But you smile and say, "Let's call it Tuesday." It feels like one. He chuckles and nods, satisfied with that. You begin your rounds as the sun finally rises, pouring thin beams of gold through the cracks in the canvas. You tend to a man with stitches across his chest, red and healing. He winces when you clean them, but doesn't pull away. You tell him about your uncle's farm, where the roosters crowed at all the wrong hours and the goats used to steal your socks off the clothesline. He laughs, then coughs, then laughs again. "Tell me more about the goats," he says. So you do. The hours pass gently. You find your rhythm once more, as you always do. Cleaning, wrapping, soothing, listening. You play checkers with one soldier who keeps losing and blaming the board. You help another write a letter to a little sister he hasn't seen in years. You help a third shave his face, his hands too shaky to hold the blade. These tasks are quiet, humble, and yet they stitch the world back together, piece by piece. Around noon, you step outside and walk to the supply tent, carrying an empty basket in one hand and a folded list in the other. The path is muddy but familiar, lined with footprints from boots both old and new. A nurse joins you halfway, and you talk about nothing in particular: the clouds, the stubbornness of one of the officers, the way tea always tastes like dust out here. But your laughter is real, even if quiet. There's something sacred in these small human conversations, like lanterns in the dark, reminding you who you are beneath the layers of duty. You return with fresh cloth, bottles of rubbing alcohol, and a tin of biscuits someone sent from home. You share them among the tent, letting each patient take one. Even the smallest comforts carry weight here. One soldier holds his biscuit for several minutes before eating it, just looking at it as if it reminds him of something he doesn't want to forget. Later in the day, a delivery of letters arrives wrapped tightly in string, smudged with fingerprints and dust. You help distribute them, calling out names softly as you move from cot to cot. Some men receive none. Others clutch theirs to their chest before opening. One man reads his aloud, stopping every few lines to catch his breath. "My mother writes like a general," he says, wiping at his eyes. "She's giving me orders in every sentence." You smile and say, "It means she loves you." He nods, the letter trembling slightly in his hand. You receive no letter of your own, but you don't mind. You carry so many stories already, so many voices, so many names written into your hands. You walk back to your cot and take out your journal instead. You write about the man with the goat story. about the way the tea steamed in the cold air, about the soldier who held his biscuit like it was gold. You write to remember, not the facts of the day, but the feelings, the textures, the quiet kindness. As evening approaches, a soft fog rolls in from the fields. It blurs the edges of the tents, turns every sound into a whisper. You light the lanterns one by one, watching as their glow pushes back the shadows. The tent fills with amber light, flickering gently against the canvas walls. You move among the beds, checking wounds, replacing bandages, tucking in corners of worn blankets. The men are tired, so are you, but the kind of tired that means you've done something that mattered. Before you rest, you stop by the boy who came in yesterday, the one who couldn't breathe. He's sleeping now, mouth slightly open, fingers curled loosely against his chest. His breath is even, peaceful. You kneel beside him and whisper, "You're doing just fine." You press a hand lightly against his blanket, then rise and return to your cot. You sit for a moment before lying down, eyes scanning the tent. So many still here, still breathing, still healing. You pull your coat over your body and lean back into your cot, letting your body settle into its familiar place. The canvas roof above you glows faintly from the lanterns, a warm halo in the fading light. Your eyes grow heavy, your limbs soften, and as sleep comes to claim you once more, you think in the quiet of your own mind, we keep going, we keep caring, and that will always be enough. The next morning comes quietly, with a slow wind blowing through the open flap of the tent and brushing against your face like a breath. You open your eyes slowly, blinking at the pale light that slips across the dirt floor, and for a few moments you stay still, letting the day come to you gently. You can hear a kettle whistling softly in the distance, a gentle murmur of voices just beginning to rise with the light. It is not a loud awakening. It is a careful one, a respectful one, the kind of start that belongs only to places where rest is precious and never taken for granted. You sit up, stretch your back, and feel the familiar stiffness in your shoulders, the mild ache in your knees. These are not complaints, they are reminders, signs that you've done good work, that your hands have mended what they could, held what was falling, offered stillness where there was none. You rise and fold your blanket with care, then splash cool water onto your face and press a towel to your skin, soaking in the crisp air of morning. The wounded are beginning to stir, some sitting upright, others blinking slowly at the canvas roof above them. You move among them quietly, checking foreheads, adjusting bandages, offering the first soft words of the day. A few ask for news. A few ask what day it is. One simply says you're here, and you nod. Because yes, you are, and sometimes that alone is enough. Breakfast is light, just some hard bread softened in broth, and a spoonful of jam passed down from the officer's tent. You divide it fairly, smiling as one man smacks his lips exaggeratedly, saying it tastes like home. You laugh, even though the jam is old and tart. You laugh because it helps, because sometimes a laugh is the only thing stronger than what hurts. You begin your rounds again, warming cloths and preparing clean dressings. One man has a fever. Another has a rash on his arms that's begun to fade. You wash each with care, speaking softly as you work. You hum again, low, slow, melodic. Not even a song, just a sound that carries comfort. A rhythm to remind the room that someone is there, that hands still move with purpose. That pain does not get the final word. By midday, the sun climbs higher and warms the tent's roof, softening the shadows and casting golden light across the patients' faces. You take a break near the edge of the field, sitting on a crate, sipping cool water from a canteen that smells faintly of leather and mint. A nurse joins you, wiping her hands with a damp cloth. Neither of you speaks for a while. You just sit side by side, letting the breeze wash over you. There is something sacred in shared silence, especially between those who know what it means to carry the same weight. You return to find a small group of children at the edge of the camp locals, eyes wide, holding baskets of eggs and bread. You exchange a few words with the woman who brought them, thank her, offer a smile. The children hand over their bundles, and you promise them the food will be used well. They nod solemnly, one of them staring at you as if you're someone important. You don't feel important, you feel useful, and sometimes that is far more enduring. You share the food in the tent, offering small bites of the warm bread to the men who can eat. One breaks his piece in half and hands it back to you, insisting you don't argue. You accept it with a grateful nod and eat it beside him, in silence, each of you facing the same direction, watching the sunlight flicker through the dust in the air. Later, you help repair a torn sling, threading a needle carefully through the frayed cloth. As you sew, a man nearby tells you about his home in the hills, how the fog in the morning rolled low and thick across the grass like a blanket, how the cows would cry out when it cleared, ready for the day. You listen closely, watching his eyes as he remembers. You imagine the hills he's speaking of, the soft crunch of frost beneath boots, the sound of wind in the trees. His story becomes a place you visit together, a place where no one is bleeding, where no one is afraid. You finish your stitching just as his story ends, and for a long moment neither of you speaks. There's no need to. The afternoon passes gently. You bathe a man too weak to do it himself, wringing warm water over his chest and arms, using slow, steady strokes. He closes his eyes, letting your hands remind him that he is still here, that his body, though worn, still belongs to him. You dry him with a towel that smells faintly of sun and grass, and you whisper, "You're doing well." He says nothing, but when you help him lie back, he squeezes your wrist once. Just once, it's enough. When evening comes, the light outside turns amber and long. The wind carries the scent of burning wood, and the first lanterns begin to flicker into life across the camp. You make your final round slowly, your steps light, your voice lower than before. You check pulses, adjust pillows, refill canteens. You hum again, and someone near the end of the row joins in with a quiet whistle, harmonizing gently. It makes you smile. Not everything has been lost. You pause at the cot of a man who hasn't spoken since he arrived. You sit beside him and talk about nothing, about the clouds, the warmth of the day, the smell of bread. You don't ask him for anything. You don't expect him to answer. You're just there. And before you leave, you tuck a note under the corner of his blanket. A single line. You are not alone. As the last of the light fades and the stars begin to prick the dark sky, you return to your cot and sit with your journal in your lap. You don't write much tonight. Just one line, still here, still helping. You lie back, arms folded across your chest, eyes on the canvas above you. Your breath slows, your thoughts drift. The sounds of the tent settle around you like a lullaby, the creak of bed frames, the wind through the flap, the distant cough of a man now fast asleep. And once more, just before sleep takes you, you feel that quiet voice return, not loud, not proud, just true. You were needed today, and you came. The rhythm of the days begins to blur, not because you forget, but because they have become woven so gently into one another that each moment seems to ripple out into the next like water, like breath, like a lullaby repeating in waves. You wake each morning to the soft hush of wind against canvas, the muted rustle of blankets, the occasional voice speaking in half sleep. And every time, as your eyes flutter open and you take in the soft golden haze of dawn, you remember exactly why you are here. Not for victory, not for glory, but for the one still breathing. You move slowly, steadily, with the weight and grace of someone who has long since learned the dance of presence. Your hands wash, fold, lift, wrap. Your voice murmurs things meant not to fix, but to soothe. Let's start here. This will only take a moment. You're not alone. There's no drama to your work, no heroism in the usual sense, just quiet steadiness, a calm flame in a world of wind. Today the tent is calm. A new shipment of supplies has arrived: clean cloth, soap, candles, thread. You and the nurses unpack the crates like children opening gifts, passing items around with grateful hands and hushed laughter. One nurse finds a bar of rose-scented soap and holds it to her face with closed eyes. "This reminds me of my mother," she says. You nod. You understand. Scents are anchors, and sometimes even a sliver of home is enough to hold you through another day. You begin your rounds, starting with the oldest patients, the ones who have stayed with you longest, who know your voice by its hum before they see your face. One of them, a man with a scar that runs from temple to jaw, asks you to sit with him a moment longer. You do. He tells you about a pond near his childhood home, where frogs croaked loudly in the summer and dragonflies skated across the water. You close your eyes and try to imagine it exactly. Not the version filtered through books or pictures, but his version, his water, his sky, his childhood echoing against tree trunks. He smiles when he sees your expression. "You're there, aren't you?" he asks. You nod. "I am." As you move from cot to cot, the work remains simple, repetitive cleaning, comforting, smoothing, soothing, but never meaningless. Repetition is sacred when it's done with love. When you rinse a man's hands with warm water and dry them with a fresh towel, it's not just hygiene, it's remembrance. A way to say your body still matters. Your comfort still counts. In the afternoon, a delivery wagon passes through, and with it comes a sack of letters and a box of donated books. Most of the books are tattered pages worn, corners folded, covers faded. But your heart swells at the sight of them. You place them carefully on a crate near the back of the tent and begin handing them out. Some of the soldiers can't read, so you sit beside them and read aloud. One man asks for something funny. Another wants poetry. A third just says anything. Just your voice. So you read. Not with flair, not with drama, just gently, with rhythm, letting the words wrap themselves around the quiet. Even the ones not listening seem soothed by the cadence. A nurse pauses beside you, closes her eyes, and just lets the sound settle into her bones. Later, the sky grows overcast, casting a silver veil over the camp. You take your journal outside for a moment and sit beneath your tree, the one with the leaning trunk and roots like twisted rope. The air smells like rain, though it doesn't fall. You run your fingers along the edge of the journal, then write, "The tree still stands. So do I. The men still breathe. So do I today was quiet. So was I. That is enough." When you return, one of the younger patients calls you over. He's wide-eyed, cheeks flushed. "I dreamed I was flying," he says, "over fields, over oceans. I didn't feel pain." You smile and sit beside him. "You'll dream it again," you say, "and next time you'll fly even farther." He nods, his lashes heavy with sleep, and you stay until he drifts back into his dream world. The evening light filters through the tent like honey, soft and slow. You light the lanterns as the sky darkens, their glow warming the canvas and casting shadows that flicker gently across resting faces. You move slowly now, not from tiredness, but from reverence. The tent feels like a sanctuary. Every cot, a place of quiet testimony. Every breath, a hymn. One soldier thanks you as you tuck his blanket beneath his arms. "I don't know how you do this every day," he says, with calm, with care. You smile, pressing your hand gently to his. "Because you're still here," you reply, "and that matters more than you know." And finally, when all are tended to, when the water bowls are emptied and the instruments cleaned, when the tent is a soft rhythm of sighs and distant murmurs, you return to your cot. You lie back and listen to the hush of breath, to the peace you helped shape, to the quiet that feels like a promise kept. And as your eyes begin to close, the words settle into your heart like a lullaby. You were here, you were needed, and you did not look away. The morning after begins with golden light, once again stretching across your closed eyelids, nudging you gently from rest. You lie still for a while, letting the warmth of sleep linger in your limbs. There is no rush today, no immediate call for urgency, just the steady promise of another day in a place where your presence still matters. You sit up slowly, your blanket slipping from your shoulders, and take a deep breath. The air is cool and clear, with a faint scent of smoke and wildflowers drifting in through the flap. Another sunrise, another beginning. As you rise and dress, the others begin to wake as well. Some groan softly, others roll to their sides, blinking into the light. You move quietly among them, offering water, adjusting blankets, brushing away the night with small, kind gestures. One man, barely awake, murmurs, "Thank you," before his eyes even open. You smile and whisper, "Of course," because here nothing is assumed. Every moment of tenderness is deliberate. You step outside and stretch your arms, your body leaning gently toward the sun. The tree is still there, of course your old friend, weathered and faithful. You walk to it and rest your hand on its trunk, feeling its rough texture beneath your fingers. The wildflowers have multiplied. You kneel to look at them, tiny, defiant things blooming in soil that has seen too much. You think about how much they've endured, about how much you have endured, and yet here they are, here you are, blooming still. When you return to the tent, the rhythm picks up once more. Morning cleaning, warming water, unwrapping and redressing wounds, offering smiles and stillness in equal measure. But something is different today. Not quieter, not slower, but lighter. There's laughter in the air, cautious and small, but present. A few soldiers are gathered near the entrance playing cards with mismatched pieces. One of them hums, another whistles. You realize that the sound of war is just for now entirely absent. In its place is something like hope. Midday brings a delivery not of wounded, but of supplies and letters, and even a small package of dried lavender, someone tucked in among the gauze and iodine. You crush a few petals between your fingers and breathe them in. The scent makes your eyes sting, but not from pain, from remembering. Lavender used to grow by the side of your grandmother's porch, right beside the rocking chair where she'd sit with a wool blanket in her lap. You smile and let the memory stay. You spend the afternoon teaching one of the younger men how to sew. His hands are too big for the needle, but you guide them gently, helping him stitch a torn pocket with patience and encouragement. You could do this when you go home, you say, sew buttons, fix things. He looks at you like you've given him something important, not just skill, but the thought of going home, the belief that there will be a home to go back to, that he might be more than a soldier again, that he might simply be. Later, one of the older soldiers asks to walk outside. You help him, one arm under his boots, crunching softly over the dirt path as you guide him toward the tree. He stands there with you in silence for a long time, staring at the sky. It's quieter than I expected, he says. You nod. It's always quieter than we expect. He leans against the tree, sighs, then adds, it's also more beautiful. You agree. The silence is beautiful, because you helped make it. When you return, the tent glows with the golden hue of late afternoon. You light the lanterns again, but they are not needed yet. The light lingers today. You use the time to tidy the space-folding blankets, refilling water jugs, brushing dust from the edges of beds. These are your last acts of the day. Not dramatic, not grand, but steady, gentle, full of care. You sit beside one last patient, a man who's been silent for days. Tonight he speaks, just a whisper. I'm scared. You take his hand and say, so am I, but we're still here. He nods. You stay beside him until he sleeps. At last, the sky fades to indigo. The stars return, steady and shining, as if they've always been watching. You lie down once more, your coat pulled around you, your body aching in the same familiar way. But it's a good ache, the kind that comes from having given your whole self to something worthwhile. Your journal waits beside your cot, open to a blank page. You pick up your pencil and write only one word tonight. Enough? And it is, because you were there. You listened. You stayed. You were the soft voice in the dark, the steady hand, the warm light. You were the medic, and every quiet moment you gave to another was a life stitched back together, one breath, one heartbeat, one whisper at a time.